Coming up, delighted to say joining me for all of that is Sam Armstrong. Welcome to you once again. Let's go back to the spring statement. Spending cuts, not tax rises. We're told by some polls is what people want. People are largely in support of welfare cuts. You wouldn't know it from the media coverage last week because it's just non-stop MPs bleating about how awful this is, and an interview with people who've got severe, obvious disabilities saying I might lose my benefits. We don't want people who've got severe obvious disabilities to lose their... We want a load of people who are claiming they're a bit anxious to go back to work because we need them to be at work. Now we're told up between 10,000 and 50,000 civil service jobs could be cut, but given, as you were pointing out earlier and Craig McKinley was pointing out, we've had 135,000 extra civil service jobs since 2016. I'm not entirely sure we'd really notice if those people weren't there doing their job. But at the same time, Rachel Reeves taking freebie tickets.
Yeah, just be very clear. The cuts that she is proposing won't even touch the sides. Yeah. And, you know, people are turning around and saying they prefer spending cuts to tax rises. Well, boy, I bet they do, because taxes in this country have never been higher. We are currently paying wartime-style taxes in this country for services that are absolutely apocalyptically bad. It's never taken as long to get an NHS appointment, and you've never been paying as much for the privilege. That is the situation that we're in. And Rachel Reeves, Rachel from Accounts, all she wants to do is tinker with the sidelines while droning very literally in her case, about the difficult choices she's making. They're not difficult choices. She's frankly ducking the difficult choices, and in between, what's she doing? She's swanning off to concerts in corporate boxes. Now, I'm sorry, this is a woman who is getting paid by us 150 grand there or thereabouts.
Apparently her bloke's a civil servant. He's on a six-figure salary too.
These are people that are milking it off the state. They can pay for their own tickets.
I mean, they're available. If you go on to sort of Ticketmaster or something, other outlets are available.
Yeah.
You could just buy these tickets because there's always people returning them and selling them. She really wants to go, but she reckons it's a security issue. Keir Starmer used this argument about going to see Arsenal at the Emirates.
Look, let's be very clear. It is not a security issue. And if it is a security issue, the correct approach is to pay for 2 tickets, then to contact the venue and say, look, I'm going to be coming in with a load of armed coppers. What do you want us to do about it? And by the way, anyone who's ever worked in politics, anyone who's ever worked around ministers that are protected, know that sort of thing gets done all of the time.
I don't want her because she's the Chancellor and she may get grief from people, get difficulty. I don't want her not to be able to take her daughter to a concert. I mean, I'm not vindictive. I'm not like you should have to stay at home. But she really at risk? I mean, come on. I don't think there's snipers who could only aim at someone in the normal, in the cheap seats.
There are other alternatives that don't involve you sitting in a box where you get free champagne, free food all night long, served by on white tablecloth linen, right? She is taking the mickey. She's taking us for a ride. She doesn't think we believe it. She knows that she criticised it when other people were doing it, but she just doesn't care. She thinks she's in this job. She thinks she's earned it. She thinks she deserves it, and she is going to milk it for every little bit it's worth.
What did you make of Angela Rayner as well? We've mentioned this a little bit earlier. She did a trip to Ethiopia, an official trip last month. No one can work out why the Deputy Prime Minister communities, local government and housing secretary, I mean, quite a lot needs to be done in that area. Really quite a lot of work that needs to be done. But why on earth she's on a trip to the East African country anyway? It's a diplomatic visit. She met leaders, witnessed the signing of an investment agreement. What, would that not have happened? It was a private deal, a private company. Why would that not have happened without her there? But apparently, and it's not been denied by her office, she asked if she could go on a personal safari during the official trip. So we paid for her flights there. 20 grand it cost for her flights. There was some business class, some economy class tickets for her and her stuff. She's there, it's all, red carpet rolled out. And then she says, oh, if I've got a spare day, can I go on a safari? Now, the answer came back, no, you can't do that. That would be a personal thing. There'd be no benefit to it for the country. It's the fact that she asked. I mean, at least the civil servant said no. But again, it's this sense of entitlement. And it goes along with the whole, how dare the Tories use the private, the Prime Minister's, the government's private jet for travelling around. Now, I don't want them swanning around and not actually being in contact with us mere mortals who, you know, travel economy class. But there is an argument, certainly for prime ministers and foreign secretaries jetting off. Frankly, you know, we're a first world country. I want you to turn up, you know, after being able to work with your civil servants, and I want, you know, are you representing our country? Got no issue with that. But they were so critical of what the Tories were doing. Literally the moment they got into office, they're on that private jet, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Do you know what? I'm a little bit ticked off about Rachel Reeves taking these tickets, but I am absolutely livid at Angela Rayner.
She didn't get the safari.
She didn't get the safari, but you know what? There was no reason for her to be in Ethiopia in the first place.
No one can work out what this was about.
This is a woman whose job is to run local government, and this is coming at a time in our country's history in which Birmingham, bins have not been collected for months, in which vermin is growing and running around the streets.
She could have done a safari in Birmingham.
Because our own Labour council in Birmingham cannot get its own house in order. And instead of dealing with that, she's swanning off, pretending that she's some big wig on the global international scene. She's doing it at our expense. That 20 grand didn't come from a donor, didn't come from a businessman, didn't come from her. It came from me, it came from you, it came from... That is the entire taxes of a working person for a year has been blown on this vanity trip.
And what have we got out of it?
And then for her to turn around and to say, oh, do you know what? I'd like to go look at some giraffes. I'd like to go look at the elephants. Can I see some lions now? That is not just wrong. That is a disgrace. She is basically ripping us off to pay for our own holidays. That's not just dodgy. That's not just got a whiff of something about it. That is flagrant stealing. She's stealing from us to have us paying our holiday.
She didn't get it, but this is the key thing. It just shows an attitude, doesn't it? Just to sort of, I'll get what I can. I'll snouts in the trough, I'll get what I can. But as I say, you know, Birmingham's plenty of wildlife among the bins, the uncollected bins in Birmingham. I mean, by all accounts, the rats are the size of cats. Maybe not big cats, maybe not lions, but they're on the way. I mean, if you want to do something useful, go and deal with that. But again, that's the thing. Why is she there? I just get the impression that Keir Starmer is going, can you just get her out of the way? Can you just get her out of the country for, you know, just go and get rid of her? But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's also talk about the Kremlin and the White House. We've got these talks in Riyadh starting today in Saudi Arabia, where we're trying to see some sort of peace talks. Again, the peace talks never take place between Ukraine and Russia. It's always, you know, it's Americans and Ukrainian Americans and Russia. Over the weekend, Steve Witkoff, who's the Donald Trump sort of special envoy, basically he's a property developer and golfing buddy of the Prime Minister, of the President. He has no international experience, but he's a deal maker. So you can see, oh, OK, fair enough. You could be, you know, might not have been an international diplomatic envoy, but those people often, well, they have not done a very good job so far. But he's supposed to be the fixer. He's done an interview with Tucker Carlson over the weekend where, I mean, frankly, he embarrassed himself and Donald Trump and his country. He didn't know some of the most basic facts. He talked about the regions in the east of the country that needed to that the Kremlin was claiming. He got none of the names right. He couldn't remember all of them, and he included Crimea in that. Well, Crimea is not in the east of the country. He has spouted numerous Kremlin talking points that are all over social media, from the Russian troll farms about Ukraine not being a proper country and the like. I mean, it's just a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Do you think there's any chance of a deal being done?
Yeah, well, look, I like bringing in people that aren't from a traditional political backgrounds into doing jobs in government, because often they do a much better job of it than ordinary diplomats that, as you say, have failed. But you've got to learn the basics about what you're negotiating. And
how can you negotiate it if you don't know the basics?
Like, geography is quite important when it comes to splitting up European countries, right? You need to know which bit is here, which bit is there. And some of the basic facts about where he was saying, oh, well, they had a referendum and this were the results. Now, look,
he basically said that the eastern region of Ukraine wants to be Russian. There was a referendum. And again...
Look, I think we can all take... Right, we can
Can we point out the facts on that, though? That it was a referendum held after the invasion by Russian troops,
well,
and it was not internationally legally recognised.
I'm prepared... Well, just put aside all of that for a minute. I'm prepared to accept a broad range of views about Russia, but I think we can all agree that the elections that they're holding there are ridiculous. You know, you have places where Vladimir Putin is winning more than 100% of the vote, right? These are silly, right? So you don't have to be full support supportive of Ukraine like I would be, and you don't have to be, just resistant to everything Russia says, but demonstrate some common sense. And this is what I worry about, is that you've got some people around Donald Trump that right now seem to see the proper research as going onto Twitter and looking at what people say. Now, look, do your facts, do your homework, come in, show your business skills, and then you might get somewhere.
Well, exactly. But even Steve Witkoff, he was talking about how, Vladimir Putin was a good guy, and how he'd arranged for Russia's top artist to paint a portrait of Donald Trump, which he delivered to Donald Trump. Again, Putin is playing these guys like a fiddle. He knows the sort of stuff that they'll like, the possible Russian, US hockey match and things like that. Let's do a bit of nicey and a few nice gifts. That's fine, but don't get sort of rose-tinted glasses about these things. This at the same time, by the way, it does appear that Keir Starmer's peacekeeping plan for the coalition of the willing is pretty much collapsing. Pretty much, as far as we can tell, it's only France and Britain who are willing to actually offer any troops on the ground. And I think the key thing about this would need to be, even if it was just a few, it was like 20 troops. You need to have some, you need to have a whole range of countries. A lot of them are saying, look, if you said your troops will provide the backup with the NATO forces where they were supposed to be otherwise, not actually wanting boots on the ground. Now Starmer's looking more to it being air power being provided, so not boots on the ground. But again, we know that the Kremlin, we know that Vladimir Putin is going to reject any of this. He's going to say that he regards every single one of these actions as a provocation of some sort. And in the meantime, we don't appear to be any closer towards a ceasefire, because the demands that Vladimir Putin is making, and there doesn't seem to be any expectation that he should back down on any of these, certainly no threats from America requiring him to, are demands which are utterly unreasonable in terms of what he gets in return for a ceasefire.
The quagmire that we are in is the perfect combination of the three great failures: Vladimir Putin's maliciousness, Trump's stupidity, and Europe's cowardice. Right? Europeans love to talk a big game. I saw at the Munich Security Conference, you saw that ridiculous sight of someone crying, this German crying. You've seen all this big game from European countries talking about how dreadful what Donald Trump is doing. And yet, when push comes to shove, when the rubber hits the road, each and every time they duck out, they duck the challenge, they don't do what's necessary, they won't even put the bare minimum in. And with a coalition of the willing, 10,000 troops, we're asking Germany to come up with 1,000, to pay for 1,000, to put 1,000 there, and they just won't even do it. It's pathetic. It is laughable. These countries, I don't want to hear from a European president, prime minister, all of the rest of it, lecturing actually those countries in the West, which include the United States, certainly includes this country, that time and time again, when the world has been facing a moment of danger, have shown up, have done what's necessary. The British troops, by the way, and the French didn't do this, went and died in Afghanistan and Iraq in order to defend the Western values from Islamist terrorists at that point. European soldiers, time and time again, didn't. I've had enough of them. I want to hear less of their lecturing. And we're never going to get a peace deal unless one of those three pillars, European cowardice, American stupidity, or Russian maliciousness, end. That's the truth of it.
Absolutely. And we're kind of only in control of one of those. So there we are. Absolutely couldn't agree with you more on all of that. Just finally want to talk to you about Norwood Primary School in Eastleigh in Hampshire. They sent a letter to parents and carers informing them they were not going to be going ahead with their Easter bonnet parade or their Easter service this year. Now, it's a non-religious school, but again, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, but we've still marked Christmas and, Easter, we do the fun of it. And again, I used to love the Easter parade at my daughter's school. You make the bonnet, they do it at nursery as well. It's just a fun activity. And as we know, schools seem to mark pretty much every single religious event going these days, but apparently not Easter. And the reason why, this new head teacher, Stephanie Mander, said in her letter, although I am assuming her pronouns, everybody, so I hope I don't get in trouble for that. She explained that they are not going to be celebrating Easter because the state schools' respect for diversity and their aim to create a more inclusive atmosphere. However, in June, they will be marking Refugee Week. I mean, this is so extraordinary. It's a bit of fun for the kids. I mean, I've got a friend who's got a kid at a nursery where they do Pride Days. Why 3-year-olds need to be talking about pride and sexuality. They're not even aware of any sexuality at all at that age. Why are you... I mean, sorry, the only people who want to impose that sort of stuff. And again, I raised my daughter absolutely not to be homophobic or anything else, you know. But this stuff is what really gets parents, because we have schools where they don't, Christmas. I remember at my daughter's school, again, it's like Christmas became a winter festival. No, it's called Christmas. That's what we're saying. When you have the tree, yeah, and you do the Father Christmas, and that's Christmas. That is literally, it is a national public holiday, Easter and Christmas in this country. We are a constitutionally Christian country. The only religion that gets downplayed in this country is anything to do with Christianity.
Yeah, let's be clear. There might be a bit of fun, OK? There might be nice things and parents might be cross because they're not doing this. But this is something much more sinister.
Absolutely.
These are public servants, public officials, people that have got rich on the back of our money, that hate this country, hate everything that represents this country's past, everything that made this country great, everything that makes this country good. And they see, when we see young boys and girls running around chasing the Easter Bunny, they see a celebration of this country and they hate it, and they have to stop it, they have to end it. And in its place, what do they want to do? They want to celebrate every force that is bringing and tearing this country down. They're going to go and celebrate Refugee Week. Let's be clear about who they're going to be celebrating there. They're going to be celebrating people that are paying criminal gangs to break into this country, in which many of them go straight onto MI5 terrorist watch lists, and all of them have participated and funded organised criminals that are conducting the most appalling practices and in which people die all the time. They are more than happy to celebrate that, and won't celebrate something basic that people in this country have been celebrating for 1,600 years.
I know, but that's the thing. It's just so extraordinary. And again, it's so harmless. But it's not even just about it being harmless or not. It is actually a big part of our culture. This downplaying of British culture and traditions. Bearing in mind the reason why these refugees stroke illegal migrants, that's what they're really talking about. The reason they come to this country, the reason why people pay $3.5 grand to get on a boat to come to this country, is because of the Judeo-Christian beliefs and traditions that have created our society, where you have, OK, it's not perfect, but we have democracy, we have individual freedoms, we have the rule of law, we have all of those things where we largely are left to our own devices. They are coming from countries which don't have that. And that's why they're fleeing those countries. This is the bizarre thing. So we haven't got a load of people in this country fleeing our values. They're not fleeing to Afghanistan or Iraq or some godforsaken country, with despotic rulers, and there is okay. Apart from Dubai, and that's largely where people are avoiding living, paying taxes, and let's face it, and they're avoiding. They're not actually imbued in the local religious culture. Who are we kidding? They're drinking alcohol. They're not going to the mosque. They're not praying 5 times a day when they're living in Dubai. So that's a load of nonsense. It's a Western lifestyle in a Muslim country. But people are not largely moving to countries of other faiths for a reason, because they don't have those freedoms. And I just find it extraordinary that children are being taught somehow that our own culture, our own history, and I say this as someone who's atheist parents. I was raised an atheist. I raised my child as an atheist. I still celebrate and mark all those festivals because they are a massive part of our national cultural life. And if you want to respect diversity, which I'm not sure we should, if you want to respect different communities, bringing people into, hey, you live here now, or you're born here from parents who've come here, come and enjoy our culture. Because if you don't want to enjoy our culture, why are you here?
Well, but Julia, nobody from these cultures that have come into this country was asked about this.
No,
none of them called for it. And time again, when actually you go out into Britain's minority communities and ask them,
they celebrate all this stuff.
They love it. And this is why they came to this country. They came because our values, our culture, our history are not just good amongst many. They are world-leading, world-changing, built the world as it is today. They are good. They are worthy of celebration. And don't you let anybody tell you that there is anything to be ashamed of about this country, our values, our culture, our history, and everything that we have given the world.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. 11:25 is the time. I want to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We're going to talk more about this in the next hour.